Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The Sringa Chaturdasi verse for this morning is 761. Everyone knows the verse. Komarat acharet pragyo dharman bhagavataniha. Very much loved verse by our founder Acharya. And the reason for picking this verse is because on Sunday we discussed chapter 5, which was a series of teachings to Nrsingadev and to his teachers. And then in chapter 6, it's Prahlad's teaching to his classmates. There's 2 chapters. This is the first verse of those 2 chapters. And just a little background before we read the verse and purport. After Prahlad, where we ended up Sunday evening, after Prahlad being asked what's the best thing that you've learned, he recited the 9 processes of bhakti. He then decided to kill his son. And he tried this and that and the other thing, and nothing worked. So he began to contemplate, something like we were hearing in the Ramayana reading. Who is this person? Where is he getting his power from? I'm the most powerful person in the universe, and everyone is afraid of me. And this boy not only is not afraid of me, but I can't harm him at all, no matter what I try. So he was brooding, or not just pondering, but he was like not in a good state. So the teachers came along and said, no worries. He's a little boy, he'll get over it. We're really good teachers. Just entrust him to us. We'll work him over. In so many words. Hiranyakashipu didn't see alternatives because he tried to kill him. He couldn't kill him. So if you can work him over, give it a try. So while they're working him over, trying to extract from him this poison of bhakti, he was not paying attention. It wasn't same as before, not interested. And then on one occasion, his teachers had to take care of some personal matters, so they left the classroom. And as happens when teachers leave a classroom, the children want to play. So as they were beginning to play, Prahlad pointed in a different direction. The different direction was devotional service. And so that's the context. I'll read the chapter summary. It's nice because it primarily focuses on this verse, because this verse sets the stage for the whole chapter. This chapter describes Prahlad Maharaja's instructions to his class friends. In speaking to his friends who were all sons of demons, Prahlad Maharaj stressed that every living entity, especially in human society, must be interested in spiritual realization from the very beginning of life. When human beings are children, they should be taught that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the worshipable deity for everyone. One should not be very much interested in material enjoyment. Instead, one should be satisfied with whatever material profits are easily obtainable, and because the duration of one's life is very short, one should utilize every moment for spiritual advancement. One may wrongly think, quote, in the beginning of our lives, let us enjoy material facilities, and in old age we may become Krishna conscious, unquote. Such materialistic thoughts are always useless because in old age one cannot be trained in the spiritual way of life. Therefore, from the very beginning of life one should engage in devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, from the previous chapter. This is the duty of all living entities. Material education is infected by the three modes of nature, but spiritual education, for which there is a great need in human society, is transcendental. Prahlad Maharaja disclosed the secret of how he had received instructions from Narada Muni. Well, that's in the next chapter, because that's what he was asked. Hey, wow, where'd you learn this? By accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, this is that sentence that we referred to a few times already. By accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, who is in the parampara succession, one will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need for material qualifications. Paragraph. After Prahlad Maharaj's class friends had listened to Prahlad Maharaj, they inquired how he had become so learned and advanced. In this way, the chapter ends. That's chapter summary. As you can see, it's focused on this first verse. The first verse is setting the stage, and the others are expanding its meaning. So let's say responsibly, because I'm sure you know the verse. Kamara acharet pragyo dharman bhagavataniha durlabham manusham janma tadapi adruvam artadam Komara acharet pragyo dharman bhagavataniha durlabham manusham janma tad apiyadruvam artadam. Prahlad Maharaj said, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. It means don't go to school, and don't clean your room, and give up all other engagement. Don't take prasadam. No, do all those things. That's part of devotional service. Giving up all other engagements, the human body is most rarely achieved. And although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Purport. The whole purpose of Vedic civilization and of reading the Vedas is to attain the perfect stage of devotional service in the human form of life. According to the Vedic system, therefore, From the very beginning of life, the brahmacharya system is introduced so that from one's very childhood, from the age of 5 years, one can practice modifying one's human activities so as to engage perfectly in devotional service. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Svalpam apyasya dharma shatrayate mahato bhayat. Even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Now, what Prabhupada said in the sentence just before is, it can give one complete perfection. Here it's most dangerous type of fear, the negative side. Seeing the Amadutas, that's the most dangerous type of fear. Modern civilization, not referring to the verdicts of Vedic literature, is so cruel to the members of human society that instead of teaching children to become brahmacharis, it teaches mothers to kill their children even in the womb, on the plea of curbing the increase of population. And if by chance a child is saved, he is educated only for sense gratification. Gradually, throughout the entire world, human society is losing interest in the perfection of life. Indeed, men are living like cats and dogs, spoiling the duration of their human lives by actually preparing to transmigrate again to the degraded species among the 8,400,000 forms of life. The Krishna consciousness movement is anxious to serve human society by teaching people to perform devotional service, which can save the human being from being degraded again to animal life. As already stated by Prahlad Maharaja, Bhagavata Dharma consists of, then lists the 9 processes again, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Bandhanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. In all the schools, colleges, and universities, and at home, all children and youths should be taught to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, they should be taught to hear the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, to put them into practice in their lives, and thus become strong in devotional service, free from fear of being degraded to animal life. Following Bhagavad Dharma has been made extremely easy in the age of Kali. The Shastra says, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam Kalo Nasteva Nasteva Gatiranyata. One need only chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Everyone engaged in the practice of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra will be completely cleansed from the core of his heart and be saved from the cycle of birth and death. Now the message here is repeated or echoed in Uddhava's instructions to Krishna, to Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, where he also speaks of this same point of the human form of life, although temporary, is very valuable. So most things that are temporary, the Vedas don't look upon them with high regard because they're temporary. I mean, the whole big message in Uddhava Gita is don't be attached to things temporary. But this one thing, this temporary, the human form of life, has special value, although temporary. Because unlike any other form, the human form of life, by design, has the capacity and is meant for realizing the highest truth. Unfortunately, people aren't trained in that principle and how to live according to that principle, and so instead the human form of life is like a super machine to bring objects to the senses and enjoy those objects, unlike other life forms. That's the superiority of the human life form in material culture. And the spirit that erodes the spiritual culture. it becomes completely forgotten, and so forth. So the restoration of spiritual culture, it's difficult. Specifically, the purport speaks of older people. It's not such an American thing, but it's certainly an Indian thing, from my experience. And later, I've heard people explicitly say like this, basically a macho mood. I can do whatever I want, and so I know I can do it at a later point in my life. That's what I'll do at a later point. Now is something else. I'll do it later. That's not the advice of the Bhagavatam, and specifically to train an older person, not easy. Specifically because there's other habits and other dependencies and other attachments, and patterns don't change so easily. So, best Komara. Komara is a term that means when you turn 6, or that's like when kids go to school, in Western culture as well, from that stage. Now, prior to that stage also, but the activities of bhakti in a more structured way ideally should begin at the earlier stage of life. I want to read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation and commentary. It's a little different. It's similar. Prahlad said the wise person should practice bhakti yoga in his life from youth. Human birth is rare and transient, but effective for bhakti. And the commentary, in human life, so Bhagavatan iha, iha means in human life. One should perform Bhagavat Dharma, that's Bhagavatan iha. In human life, one should perform Bhagavat Dharma since it gives value to this birth. Devatas, on the other hand, have excessive sense enjoyment, and animals have no power of discrimination. Having attained human birth, one should not delay. Starting from childhood, Komara, one should practice, since human life is impermanent and rarely achieved. Since scriptures are meant primarily for humans, this statement confirms the importance of scripture. But one is considered a human by having intelligence of a human. And some people are considered animal because they don't have the intelligence of a human. Complicated, sophisticated, other kind of material intelligence, but that's not human, although that's taken as like an advanced human. Similar to the understanding of Ishopanishad, vidya and avidya. The culture of avidya is exercising material intelligence and becoming a stronger animal that doesn't have animals have no power of discrimination. And the power of discrimination in the positive sense, or the wholesome sense, that's what intelligence does. It discriminates one thing from another thing. And then when you understand this thing for that thing, then you make some choices with your intelligence, and you direct the mind and direct the senses, and that's what humans do. And the animals don't. Or they may be constrained by training to not this and that, and to do this and do that, train an animal to do some tricks and things. But it's not that the higher faculty of discrimination that humans have, at least the potential. So that spiritual potential requires training. And then taking the big picture, going back to one of the instructions from chapter 5, in response to his teachers, or was it Hiranyakashipu? No, his Hiranyakashipu. Na te vidu svartakatemi Vishnum. We hear that again and again from Prabhupada. So the discrimination requires the faculty of discrimination, the faculty of intelligence, which is the faculty of discrimination, requires training. Say it negatively. Without the training, that faculty of discrimination won't develop. It'll be used in some other way. So when developed, and it takes some effort on the part of the student, it takes some effort on the part of the teacher, and qualification of both. That is, I want to learn, and here's knowledge. Then the power of discrimination can take one in a spiritual direction. That's human life. And that should be practiced from childhood. Then comes this other understanding. Supposing somebody doesn't get introduced to spiritual teachings from childhood. That's a lot of people. I mean, yeah, a lot of people. Even if there's some kind, we'll go in the very generous and soft picture, some kind of a conception of religion and superior being and God or something like that. Of course, there's some overt atheists, but civilized society means some kind of conception, but not Bhagavad Dharma of understanding Bhagavan and becoming attracted to Bhagavan and wanting to serve Bhagavan. I mean, there's some notional idea, largely, in doctrines and teachings and isms out there. And that's civilized human life. And following those codes, that's civilized, that's religious life. Bhagavad Dharma notches it up a bit, because then there's very, very clear understanding of who is Bhagavan and what is service to Bhagavan. And according to Varna and Ashram, or one's psychophysical nature, knowing what is suitable for me and going in that direction towards serving Bhagavan. That's progressive civilization. And one of the things that Prahlad, in his prayers, prays to Lord Nrsingadev is, don't just rescue me, rescue everyone. Because everyone, like me, is bad association, distracted, etc. And please deliver everyone. So this is a deliver everyone thought also. It's very broad. The compassion of Prahlad is very broad. And the fearlessness of Prahlad is quite significant too. I mean, he knows what's going to happen. It's not like he doesn't know. He's just, a little naive and doesn't know what's going to happen. There's already been attempted murder multiple times, and he's still doing it. So something's going to happen. But he's not foolish. He's just feeling protected and very compassionate. And then on the receiving end of compassion, that's ideally us. It's one of these thoughts that has come up multiple times in the past couple of weeks, specific to Pankajangri's departure, and then people remembering what they had, some, at least many, Bhakti True Swami's departure, and of course, people, family members, or people that you know in India, and they're in dire condition or also lost their life, and so on. Lots of grief. Grief counseling is part of our services to one another these days. But also a reminder that the opportunity that we have is very special. And it's temporary. Adruvam, it's rarely achieved. Durlabham manusham janma tadapi adruvam. Just like the name of Dhruva means permanent. And adruva means impermanent, quite fleeting. And, we have our thinking of all the turbulence in the world, or oppressive governments, or, crazy stuff. And here we are, we have the bhakti process, we have enormous access to Srila Prabhupada, and such a powerful, amongst all acharyas, such a powerful acharya, in such a short period, even of, short while ago. In the day of Brahma, when Krishna appears or Lord Chaitanya appears, in such a recent time, and our necessities are taken care of. There may be something, but everything is there. The material facilities, the spiritual facilities, the human form of life. Take advantage. Develop what's the opportunity, because life is very short, and it's very rarely achieved, and we don't know what's next. And here we are. I've shared this a few times, and I'm doing it again. Somebody sent me some passage from Lalita Madhava that I really liked. And so I shared it with others that are living in Vrindavan. It's toward the end of Lalita Madhava, which is the second of the two dramas, and a conversation between Radha and Krishna, where Radha glorifies Vrindavan and says, I have one request. Persons who reside in Vrindavan and who very sincerely dedicate themselves to be connected with you, please bring them to Vrindavan. Please make them part of your eternal entourage. And Krishna says, beloved, so be it. So I wrote to some devotees, and they said, oh, I'm not so qualified. You're in Vrindavan. And however qualified or not qualified, you everything is there, and after some time it's going to be slipped away. It's gone. Life is short. And the opportunity for sadhu sangha to help us, make up a difference between where our shortcomings and where we want to be. The Pankajangris and Bhakti Chumrajas and the people that are exemplary Vaishnavas, how long are they going to be around? And then what? This is a message of gratitude and urgency, which is very similar to what Prahlad is saying to his classmates. They're children. The teacher's gone. They want to play. And he's, curbing that tendency and replacing it with the bhakti tendency. And they really like it. As you know, they start chanting, push their desks to the side or whatever they is, and they're having kirtan. And Sunda and Marka come back and what? And they run to tell Hiranyakashipu, you know what's going on. And that's when the appearance of Lord Nrsingadeva happens. Draws his sword. He can't kill his son, so let me kill the one who's giving him strength. Where's Vishnu? But so back to the 2 chapters worth. The discussions, the instructions given to Hiranyakashipu and to the teachers, they're very short in comparison. And that's like admonishment for not knowing the mission of life and instead being attached to friends and enemies. And like a blind man leading another blind man, falling into a dark well that has no water, and all those celebrated verses, the materialistic society that's led by people that don't know. And here we are. Now, but although the society is led by people who don't know, we have people who know. I mean, we have the Bhagavatam. Dharman Bhagavatani ha. Durlabham Manusham Janma. Durlabham. Very rarely obtained. And how long will we have it? Although it's temporary, how long will we have it? And it has the facility for achieving perfection. Not just like continuing to feel comfortable and not as harassed as some people are harassed. I mean, the bombings and the thises and the that's and the impending war in the Arctic and South Sea Islands and all the craziness that's going on all over the place. Hong Kong and Taiwan and this thing and that thing and this country, that country, and it's madness. Who knows? Even if we get a human form of life. Yikes. Who knows? Without detailing, the oppressive circumstances, even devotees are subjected to. Current, modern, contemporary devotees in different places are subjected to. We have, out of all the millions and whatever the numbers of people on the planet, we have a really good situation. Don't just be comfortable. It's use that wisely, prudently, and amplify, accept necessities, and amplify the spiritual opportunity. That's what this whole chapter is. Prabhupada gave a lot of emphasis. I'll just finish with this. Prabhupada gave a lot of emphasis on education of children in his mission. And it's not easy. For a lot of reasons, it's not easy. But the future of the spiritual, of not just the spiritual organization, but the future of the welfare of society is in the hands of the younger generation. They're the younger generation people. Prabhupada is saying the Komara, but he's also using the word youth. Very important resource for the welfare of society going into the future. Kali Yuga doesn't get easier. Kali Yuga gets more complicated and more distracting and more turbulent and so on. So a lot of attention as Prabhupada gave, and we should, I would say, it's not adequate. There's something for sure, but it's not adequate. Not what it could be, should be, would be, what Prabhupada wanted, and what the Bhagavatam wants, because this is Prahlad. Of course, he's school age. Now he's a hero. We don't hear about. Let's take Dhruva for example. We don't hear what happened to Dhruva when he came back. Now maybe he did something similar. Hey, classmates, let's get into Vishnu Bhakti. I mean, we don't know. We do know what Prahlad did in the face of, a pretty strong opposition. We don't have that strong opposition. So, it's not easy. It's not easy. And the attention is distracted. From the children's side, from the parents' side. I just am thinking, because I was just in Houston for 3 weeks. The temple received an inheritance, a large one, from a doctor. So part of the fund of that inheritance was used for building a Goswami Academy. The plan was to have education for children starting at this age, and then that age, and then that age, and that age. And they built a building, the Goswami Academy. And they took curriculum from Dallas, because they've been running their little school for some time, and so forth and so on. I spoke to one of the teachers there. And there's very little attendance. Even there's facility, there's a building, and there's willingness in the part of. But, one explanation is, well, the temple is not proximate to people's homes. So how you can have your kids go to a school that's not proximate to the home? The answer to that is there's lots of families that have homes in that area. And there's not very many children in the school. Then another answer is, well, it doesn't have the same academics. I mean, I didn't hear this from the teachers. That was just an assessment, because I asked some of the teachers, do you have a teaching certificate? Not yet. So parents want their kids to get the best education. I mean, just like this neighborhood, there's so many Indian families because they want their kids to get good education because the schools are good, and so forth and so on. So it's a different, get the good education instead of the spiritual training and education. And so hopefully that's going on in homes, but supposing it's not, like the homes in this neighborhood, how many are giving spiritual training and education? Anyway, I got a violin out here, but I'll put it away. It's just, it's de-emphasized, it's under-emphasized. It doesn't get sufficient attention. And how do you bring sufficient attention to something that's not? Well, read the Bhagavatam and open your eyes and see where society is going, and understand what great acharyas wanted, Prahlad Maharaja being one of our Mahajans, and it's de-emphasized. And for that matter, even for, take the adult population, and the human form of life is meant for attaining perfection. How much the goal of perfection? But that's what the human form of life is meant for. It's not meant for just being comfortable and kind of, comfortable. It's meant for perfection. That's high. That's perfect. Perfection is perfect. But the human form of life is meant for that. So how to inculcate that? It's not easy. It's much easier to be comfortable rather than uncomfortable. And trying to be comfortable instead of uncomfortable, you end up being uncomfortable. Anyway, this is one of the teachings. I've taken more time than I thought I would. And then this evening we'll be observing Lord Nrsingadev's appearance. He hasn't come out of the pillar yet. So let's see if there's some discussion.
But in this class, there was a sense of urgency in the human form of life that was being mentioned. And when we are hearing in the preface of this class about understanding the mode of spiritual life, so this quality of urgency, I just want to hear more about it. Like from the level of the mind, sometimes it goes in the sense of emergency. But that's a very exhaustive way of pursuing spiritual life. But there is this, so understanding from the mode of spiritual life, this element or quality of urgency, if you can speak on that.
Thank you. If you remember when I spoke on this on Sunday, I kept flipping between mode and mood, mode and mood. And of course, mood can be thought of as, something that's in the mind, but sustaining something in the mind is not so easy. So it has to come from the heart or the soul, using those two as being like equivalent, much more equivalent than the mind and the heart. A sense of urgency from the heart that says whatever you fill in the blank, but in a relationship that's, say, service with the personality of Godhead. It's a relationship of service. And service, so the urgency comes with recognizing the what's on the outside as well as what's on the inside. On the outside, this adravam, rarely achieved, impermanent situation. Durlabham adruvam. So that's looking at the outside. And then the inside is a need to feel love and to love and be loved. Now, is that urgent or not? It's something that we all live with, and then if it doesn't take it a priority, well, you're using the word urgency, but if it doesn't take the priority or sense of urgency, then it's going to be placed elsewhere, and then we get the unsatisfying and disturbed condition, where there's sometimes some sense of contentment and sometimes some not sense of contentment because the center or the object is missed. It's a little bit on the note of urgency. There's like faith, and then faith in its most matured stage is prema, because the 9 stages of bhakti begins with faith, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti. All the different stages of bhakti are simply stages of faith. Or Vaishnav, one who's initiated, one who just by seeing them, you think of Krishna. There's different gradations of a Vaishnava, different gradations of faith. There's different gradations of wanting to love and be loved. in terms of, taking material shelter. This is now, at the heart level, not just the mind, because the mind will oscillate. Chanchala. So, the sense of yearning, the sense of enthusiasm, and ramp it up, and the sense of greed. So the same with urgency. Like, when I'm down, I have a sense of urgency. I don't like to be down. And then when things aren't down anymore, I kind of like, it's okay. Urgency is gone. So recognizing what the goal is, sva-artha. And then if I don't pay attention to swa-artha, I'm going to be consumed by the opposite, by diversion. And, the bhakti path requires to the perfectional stage. Again, taking a look at the outside, it's very short and it's rarely achieved. And now it's there. Let me, with urgency, that's looking at the outside, let me take advantage of this and let me exercise the opportunity, the gift that's been given to me carefully and, vigorously. Not with like an obsession, but with a sense of time is moving. Somebody sent me a video, a TED talk on procrastination. Then I saw there's a whole bunch of them. But some people they're procrastinators. And it's not uncommon in spiritual life also. But, in schoolwork, it's really common. And, those that understand, look, I don't want to have that calamity towards crossing the finish line where I have to do everything, in cram. Anyway, the sense of urgency that comes from wisdom is this human form of life is meant for this purpose, and it's something that I want, and it's the opportunity, the window of opportunity is going to close, and I don't know what's going to happen after that. So let me, not just out of fear of what might happen if I don't, but with the sense of urgency that this is something that I really want and all the resources are there. I'm not really good at using those resources, but all those resources are there. Special. And then it sustains when it's from the heart or from the soul. And otherwise it's intermittent at best. Anything else?
We talked about few days ago, you mentioned about contentment and happiness. So when we do devotional service, sometimes we feel content, we feel happy, and but it's at least in my case, what I've observed is when I feel that state of contentment, there is this tendency to go back to instead of staying with it, it's kind of like going back to what I know as comfortable. And there's this constant battle, like I can observe that this is what I'm doing, oh, there's so much joy in here. But then every time that happens, there's also this tendency to go back to something that I'm thinking is comfortable. And like you were mentioning, that leads to uncomfortableness. So I just want to know, like, why that would happen, and what is one way to.
Well, you know why. We're lazy. And what to do is, especially when you see, like you said, a pattern. Seeing the pattern is itself progress. Because when one is covered, one doesn't see the patterns. One just gets, drawn, pulled by the current of time and the modes of nature, or Prabhupada says, pulled by the ear of Maya. When there's slackening, then there's a pattern, and the pattern has to do with guna and karma. And when you see the pattern, then it's good. That's progress. And then how do you break a pattern? When you see the pattern happening once again, and then happening once again, and happening once again, then you put something else in its place. You may admonish yourself for, a pattern that's unwholesome, but what you have to put something in its place. And like her question, from the mind, it's quite flickering. It's quite transient, not satisfying, and before you know it, you're not even acknowledging. You're not conscious of the pattern. You're just doing it again. So it's from the heart. How do you get from the heart? It takes progress. It takes developing bhakti. Developing the principle of leaving my self-interest in the hands of Krishna. Using Prabhupada, I was just listening this morning, Prabhupada speaking, never consider yourself independent or dependent. So, cultivating that dependence mood, which is anathema to the independent mood of the patterns that happen. I make an effort and I need Krishna's help, and I want this connection with Krishna. So this, the pattern will continue and continue and continue until the bhakti force becomes cultivated properly. And then the pattern can change, or be just hit the delete button, or gradually diminish. Stay longer in the wholesome and less in the pattern of conditioning, guna and karma conditioning. But it's really helpful to say it one more time. When you see a pattern, light should go on. I'm being controlled by my conditioning, and I'm thanking Krishna for that light, turning that light on. Now I'm going to turn to Krishna again for overcoming this pattern. So you don't just take your hands off the steering wheel. You put your hands on the steering wheel and you go in the direction of something other than that pattern. Like, start with gratitude for spiritual instructions and facilities that are given, and you go there. Just like a good child will learn something that may be a tendency to do something that's hurtful, play with fire or whatever it is, and, by good instruction, they don't play with fire anymore. But if they don't heed the good instruction and have the sense of, protection and safety and wisdom, then they'll stick their hand in fire. It's maturing spiritually. And effort and mercy are both required. Good instructions from a good instructor, and following that instruction, and lots of mercy. Otherwise, it's Purnarjanma, and we're not sure where it's going to be. I don't know if I want to do it again. Okay, something else? Online, go ahead. Anything online or no? Yes.
This is from Vishalakshadas. She says, very inspiring to hear from you about the deep gratitude for the service of spiritual master. What steps shall I take to act with genuine gratitude for you?
We just discussed it. Hear with an open heart and recognize this is a direction that's meant for me. And with that gratitude in your heart, having received, you move in that direction. You cultivate. However imperfectly, you cultivate.
This is from Archana Vaidya, and she's saying, I'm coming to an understanding that everything boils down to my disposition toward the Lord. If I don't have feelings for the Lord, all the tendencies of non-urgency, apathy, offenses, etc. are there. Is this understanding correct? Also,
Wait, before the also. It sounds okay. Next.
Okay. Also, feeling cannot be developed artificially. What can I practically do to develop favorable mood toward the Lord?
Well, go to the heart, and the favorable attitude is already there.
That's it, Maharaj.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.